Drivers are always looking for comfort. It almost seems like it's a prerequisite for them to perform at their best. How do you, Patrick, manage the relationship between what you can do as a crew chief and what a driver needs when it comes to comfort?
Well, for us, we start in the shop with Parker from the time we mount the seat to we pull our seat insert, the seat belts, the steering wheel, shifter, all that goes into that's his office every Saturday afternoon. So we try to make that as best we can so he's most comfortable. His helmet, the thickness of the padding of the headrest, and pedal location, and all that. We make the same week in and week out. And if he can sit in there and be comfortable, not get leg cramps, and his back doesn't bother him, and he's more capable of driving at 100% for 3 hours at a time. We race at Texas Motor Speedway sometimes, and it's been 140 degrees or more in the car, but what we have is AC units that blow cool air on his helmet. We have cool shirts that cycle cooler. It's not ice cold, but cooler water through his chest to try to help with all that. And the only way that we can optimize the performance is to have the driver at 100% for 300 miles on the Saturday afternoon. So that's what we do. At all the little details, we add those up, and we try to make it as so he can just sit in there and focus on the performance of the race car. Once he's able to do that, then he can tell us, hey, is the car too tight? Is it too loose? I like it like this. And all that goes into being comfortable. So that's what we do.
I love it, guys. We're here with Patrick Donahue with almost 30 years of experience under the hood with racing and competing in four wheels and auto racing. Patrick's career started professionally just 2 days after his high school graduation. He didn't wait long. When he earned a job with Hendrick Motorsports as a mechanic and tire specialist for the number 24 DuPont Chevrolet driven by Jeff Gordon, none other than Jeff Gordon, in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. And not only that, but you earned what I thought was a pretty cool award, was the Crew Chief Honor Award 8. And if I had to list all the amazing teams that you've been a part of, it would be a heck of a list. And what's more important or more challenging and more rewarding is the fact that you've competed against some of the best. I mean, whether it's Joe Gibbs Racing, Richard Childress Racing, JR Motorsports, you've had quite an impressive career. Anything I left out you wanted to add?
Oh, Lord, I actually started racing when I was 8 years old, and I've honestly never had another job other than racing. So I've been very fortunate, yes, to work with a lot of great teams and a lot of great drivers and learn so much over the years. I'm very, very fortunate.
Now, I wanted to kind of bring it back to the topic of comfort because, what you said really resonated with me. But what's also interesting, and I wanted to explore a little bit, is how do you know when the comfort of a driver is something that needs to be solved by you recommending changes to the car itself, the tires, the chassis, what have you? How do you know when it's that versus, hey, as a mental performance coach, I hear people saying they're uncomfortable all the time. And oftentimes it's not the vehicle, it's them. How do you differentiate between the two?
Well, I'm gonna back up just a little bit. When I was at the 24 car, racing was a lot different back then. Technology wasn't what it is today, and we learned as we went through those years that with Jeff. Ray was super smart, and we had great people that I was very young, and they were the leaders. But what we learned is like, okay, he really liked this car, but didn't like this car so much. And well, when it got down to it, it wasn't always the race car. The seat was mounted a little bit different, or their pedals were in a different location. So when we started focusing on some of that stuff with Jeff and really detailing and blueprinting, hey, he likes this car. Like we had this car, black or 2411. You can look it up. It won a lot of races that year, and that was the favorite car. And we blueprinted that car, the angle of the seat, and the pedals, and the steering wheel location, and so every car after that was built off of those specs. And what we learned was is that, oh, ergonomics were just as important as the race car. And the driver, in Cup, we're running 500-600 miles. So Jeff was working out, he was getting in better shape, and following some other drivers like Mark Martin was really big into working out at that time. Well, all of a sudden he's more comfortable. He's operating 100%. He could get out after 500 miles of Dover and stand there in victory lane and be like, I could go do another 500 miles. So as a team, we really focused on that stuff, and along with a lot of other things. But that was one of the areas that I was lucky enough to be around. But we built on that, and as time went on, we had carbon monoxide filters in the AC, and seat, fans blowing on their backs, and you just kept trying to improve all that stuff to help the performance of the driver. Because again, 500 miles is a long ways, or 600 miles. At the time at Charlotte, they'd be in the car 5 hours, 5.5 hours, and they can't exactly stretch their legs out and stretch their back and move around. So we were trying to optimize that, and we did. A lot of that success was from just being comfortable and not wearing the driver out.
Now, when you reflect back on the early days of Jeff Gordon, obviously there were things that contributed to his success. Would love to hear not just what did you recognize in him at the time as a driver that you feel contributed to his success, but obviously you've been in the sport for a long time. You've been able to see his progression, maybe not following him, to the detail, but you've at least been aware of his progression and probably have got some insights as to what you think early day Jeff changed to get to him in his success maybe later in his career. So we'd love to hear what you saw early in his career and what you think he worked on to become one of the best athletes in the sport.
Well, I mean, again, I went there in '93. Again, we wrecked a lot as he learned, as the team learned how to Winston Cup race as it is at the time. And Ray was really pushing the envelope and wanting to do things his way, and the people that were there, we were just soldiers, and we worked whatever Ray said, we did, and we trusted 100%, and we knew that what Ray said was going to be better. And like I said, we did wreck a lot the first year, and then we learned, Jeff learned, Ray learned, the team learned, and we just kept building better race cars, and with that, Jeff got more comfortable. The talent was always there. We probably, as an organization, as a group, we just got a whole lot better. And then Ray was super focused on the details, and that just led to the rest, everybody else that was there, who just pushing us. You don't know it then, but I can look at it now 30 years later and say, wow, what we thought was a really hard working environment wasn't a hard working environment. He was just pushing us out of our comfort zone. Like we all were, well, this is how they used to do it. Well, no, that's not how. That doesn't mean we can't do it differently. It can't be done better. So as a group, we just kept working on every minute of the day at the shop or the track, maximizing our practice time, maximizing how we got through tech, maximizing our races. And Ray was really, pit crews, and he was super focused on the details. And like I said, I was super lucky. I didn't realize it then. I was just working and paying attention and trying to take it all in. But we were really on the forefront of moving the sport forward on some of the details and how the cars were built. And it's kind of neat to look back now and see how that all went. But Jeff just matured like everybody else does, right? He came in and we got enough time to put it all together and go out there and dominate. So it was hard work. It wasn't always enjoyable. Like if we didn't win, it was a quiet ride home, and there was some hard meetings on Tuesday night around the picnic table in the shop, but we learned from it, and if we didn't win, we had made a mistake. Basically, somebody made a mistake, or something had happened. That's just how it was, and so we focused on that, and made plans, or whatever, to make sure that that stuff didn't happen again. And that's how we progressed. And Jeff did the same thing. So it was a group effort, and it was really, I think it caught a lot of people off guard, because we just changed so much stuff in 2 or 3 years of the sport. So, but again, I was super lucky to be a part of it, and witness it. So
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many moving parts, right? You've got obviously physical parts in the car, but would love to hear, how do you manage the relationships? Because it seems like there's a couple things that are important. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is you as a crew chief. How does your relationship work when it comes to, and this is how I envision things, is obviously you have a team owner, and that team owner has certain goals, certain desires. Obviously, it's probably to win every damn race. However, how do you manage that relationship? But then also, you've got a whole team of people, underneath you. You've got a car chief, you've got spotter, you've got mechanics, you got a tire
mhm.
guy. Would love to hear you maybe talk about, one, how do you manage those relationships? Because obviously, the relationship you have with the team owner, he's got a certain personality and a set of expectations. The car chief has a certain personality and way of
Oh
communicating
yeah,
and expectations, as does the driver, the spotter, the beginning.
yeah.
So, how do you manage all that? What's been like the one thing you've learned over the years to best manage that communication?
Well, a very wise man, actually Jeff Gordon's stepdad, John Bickford, told me. He said, and I'll never forget this. When I got my first crew chief job, when I got Ray and Jeff put that Pepsi Busch car together, and they asked me to go do it. And John Bickford told me, he said, you'll never be, they'll never trust you as a leader until you have gray hair. And I was what was I, 25 years old at the time, and I was like, okay. And John's super smart, like he's one of the smartest people I know. And lo and behold, he was 100% correct. But over the years, you just learn. I I wish I wish I'd had kids when I was 25 years old, because my patience get better when you have kids, right? So it took me a long time, but a couple things that I learned. Everybody's 100% is different, and if an employee is giving you 100% that you hired him to do, then you accept that. If you hire a guy and he's not giving 100%, and he can do more, well, then that's where it starts to bother me. And so back to the how do we manage all this? So everybody's goals and agendas is different. So I have this 12 of us that work at Big Machine Racing, and I've learned that each over the years, doesn't matter where you're at, everybody's goals and agenda, like you said, are different. So what makes this person tick? What's important to them this week? What's important to them in their home life, shop life? How does everybody integrate? And so I, the way I work at it is I tell the people, I said, I don't need everybody to be best friends and go over each other's house and barbecue. What I need you to do is be a team here at the shop, and when we go on the road, and act like a professional race team. And not everybody's personalities gel, but everybody has a purpose there. And so I learned that. I learned that early on. I learned that at the 24 car. I didn't know it then, but after the fact, I learned that how lucky we were to have that group. And then you build a nucleus. You build your core of people, and you build what is our what makes you tick? Are we laugh and joke and still, or can we not do that? So you go down the line, and you kind of figure out what makes everybody tick. And again, what's important to me on a Monday is not always important to what my suspension guy or my tire guy or my truck driver. So it took me a long time to learn that, and have a little bit a bigger a window of I don't want to say caring, but just understanding of, hey, just because what's best for the shop doesn't always fit with what this guy's got to do this week. He might have soccer with his kids, or he might have a doctor's appointment. So I I try, and I've learned that you try to work with these guys. Look, we race 33 weekends a year, and we're gone 2 or 3 days a week, and so I you got to be a little bit flexible. Can't lose the sight of what's important to the organization. Now, back to your first question, my owner Scott Borchetta from Nashville, he owns Spike Coolers and Spike Vodka, and we put this team together 3 years ago, and the goal was to go race, right? So just get to the track, and then it was like, okay, how are we going to run top 15? And then we started running top 15, and then how are we going to run top 10? And then and so and then we won a race last year with Tyler Reddick, and that was way sooner than I thought we were going to achieve that goal on only really our second season. And then this year, we got Parker. And so over my years, I've very seldom have I had the same driver year after year. I worked for race teams that they brought paid drivers came, and a lot of them weren't there 2 years in a row. They only had money to be 1 year there, and then they went on, or they went someplace else, or it's just how it was. It's how I made my living, and so you learn every has again a different personality, a different way that they want their car set up, how they interact with the team, how they interact with the engineer, and then what are their personal life, right? Some people, I've had drivers that are at the shop every day, and then I've had drivers that they don't want to be around the shop. So early on, you got to kind of figure that out and figure out, okay, well, I'm almost 50 years old and they're 19, so our music is not going to be the same, and what's important to them, is not important to me. And I got a family and 2 kids, and they're single and live in an apartment. Like they don't have a lot. So you learn that early on, and then you kind of figure out the boundaries, or what makes everybody happy. So that's how I made my living. So I don't go into a season with this is the way it's going to be with this driver, and that's it, because that's just not going to work. And everybody, you kind of figure that out. And as this year went on, I didn't know Parker at all before last year. He drove my car one time at Talladega, and I enjoyed him, and he was nice to my guys, and did a great job. And that was one of the reasons he got the job full time this year. But as far as being around him and knowing what makes him tick, or even where he lived, I had no idea what his background really was. But as the year goes on, you learn, hey, he's at the shop one day a week doing his sim work. He works out every day. Okay, this is what's important to him. So, he's an adult, and that's kind of what I wanted in our race team is he shows up for work every day. He does his job. And we don't have to tell him to go to the gym and be eating right. He does all that. So those are the things that it changes year after year. Or for most people, again, I'm lucky. Parker's coming back, and we don't have to learn that. And I think as our year went on this year, it showed like, okay, you kind of find the balance as to how everybody operates, or like I'll tell you, like I yelled at Parker one time during the season, and he's like, "Hey, you don't have to yell." Okay, so I didn't want to upset him during the race, so I learned not to yell at him. Those are just, there's some drivers, you hear them that they scream at each other all race long, and it works for them, and they can go a win. Some people it doesn't work for, so I didn't do it intentionally to Parker. It was just venting, but you just learn, like, hey, this is how we're going to get through this race. But yeah, I mean, everybody has just different ways that they get through it, but I'm very fortunate. I have a good group of guys, and again, I work hard at trying to learn each person individually, and then what makes them tick today, and that's just how it is. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've been given enough time to get a group of people together that work together. every morning at 7 o'clock, they come in for the betterment of the 48 car. And then that's again, whether they go race go-karts at night or they go home and watch Netflix, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. But when they're there, they're going to do a job, and they're going to do it the best of their ability. And so it's my job to extract that from them, and maybe push them sometimes, just like I was, outside their comfort zone, and grow. The only way you're going to grow is to move along and do it sometimes differently than the way you've ever done it. So that's the other challenge. Okay, what are we going to do today to be better? Yes, we almost won Texas, but okay, but we got to be better. What can we do to go back to Texas next year, or go to Kansas, or go to Portland and be better? So, you got to push everybody and put a goal out there, and make it look real so that they can achieve it. And so that's the other side of my job,
I,
yeah.
yeah, I love it. And it's fascinating to me how your response to that question rattled off so easily, but yet it was like a master class in leadership, team leadership, because that's a skill that I think a lot of drivers need to adopt. Is they need to be leaders, and they need to understand leadership. Like I have athletes that I work with as a mental performance coach in motorsports, and in the off season, I find myself working on two things. One, how do I help my athletes become leaders and be at one with the team, get everyone on the same page? To your point, understand the personalities. What works for one person doesn't work for another. There
Hmm.
might be the one person that needs to be like, hey man, like let's go, and that motivates them. Then there might be
Hmm.
another person on the team where if you say that, they're gonna be like, hey man, don't tell me what to do. I know what to do. I don't need you on my back. You're breathing down my neck. But yet you could use the exact same phrase with both of those two people,
Hmm.
but yet it's received differently, right? And so I love how you highlighted that, and I think it's an important thing. And what I'm curious to hear from you is, I feel that one of the most underrated things in motorsports and in all sports, truthfully, is the relationship and the level of respect a team has for a driver. Because you know the thing is that when it comes to race time, or it comes to any of these events, a lot of times what we find is that it's the athlete is getting all the glamour. They're the ones that often are going to be the first one to get interviewed. They're the ones, the cute, pretty cool looking suit. They're the ones that on social media, everyone wants to follow. But yet, if they didn't have the team behind them, in the car behind them, and the support they have behind them, they're nothing. What kind of advice do you give either drivers or even just athletes in general to kind of form the most meaningful and most well-respected bond with their team, because it does seem like it's two different groups of people coming together as one.
Yeah. Let's see. So if you go back to like Tom Brady was the leader of that team, obviously. I mean, he was the smartest guy on the field, and wasn't necessarily the most athletic guy. So if you go that route and put that to motorsports, you say, okay, in today's time, the driver has a lot of tools to work with. We have data to look at, we have simulation we can look at, we have driver notes, we have uh, past races we can look at, and then you have personal experience. So as far as preparing, the driver has a lot of tools now, integrating with my race team, so that my race team was already not, it was already built. Parker stepped into it, and we had our ways of doing things, and our kind of our culture is the word that I'm looking for. This is how we operated, and we'd had some success with that, and so when he comes in, how does he fit into our group, our culture, and then we go from there and say, okay, again, I'm going to go back, and you spend time together. We're on the road, whether we're on the airplane, or sitting in the hauler, or we're at dinner, we're at the shop. It can't be forced. It has to be time. Again, if we go to the simulator and we work for 3 hours, things happen you communicate that way, and you just build your bond and your connection there. And then as time goes on, you're at the racetrack and things happen, and we just continue to build that relationship week after week. It's not one brick, or 50 bricks. It's one little piece at a time. And we go around and we say, oh, okay, this, we don't like it when we do this. When we when we get there and we have troubles, and our practice doesn't go right, does it throw us off and just ruin our whole day? Or, hey, can we overcome it? Can we keep cool minds and trust that we have the ability and the knowledge to fix it, and that it's going to be all right when we leave the racetrack? So that comes with trust. It comes with past experience, and it comes with the relationship, and it does not happen overnight. And you think it does. You think that when we went to Daytona last year, like, oh, it's gonna be great, and we know each other. No, you get going and you talked on the radio, and like I said, one person you can raise your voice to, and the next person you can't. Or, hey, he gets, this affects the driver, this sets him off. Or, hey, he can have an incident, where somebody runs into him, and the guy and loses his mind, and it ruins your day. Or the driver's real level headed. So, again, Parker's real. I mean, for the most part, he stays level headed, and things don't bother him, and is able to work through those challenges, whether they're on the racetrack or on pit road. So, again, time is the only thing that, and I think you see it in a lot of sports, as the season goes on, the trust and everybody's cohesive working together gets better, and that comes from practice, and it comes from days on the road. Or, hey, just sitting there after in the trailer and watching F1 practice, or watching something else that, and just learning what each other likes and dislikes. And it just is just, it's just time. You can't force it. It just has to come with experience. So, we as our year went on, we got better. We felt like we were in a really good spot there at the end of the year. So, we were. But again, I've used my past experience of dealing with many different drivers, that I just let it flow. Like, we can't force this. I can't go out to dinner with Parker 7 nights a week. It's just not gonna. It's not going to make it go any quicker, because we have years of individuality that is just not. It's just not going to change overnight. So, we that's how I approach it. That's how the guys approach it in the shop. And I think we did a good job of it this year.
Yeah, and I mean, to go back and just highlight, I mean, you created a team, or you built a team, or part of a team that within 1 year won at Texas Motor Speedway. And it's insane to me that a team could come on to a series, or into a series, and within 1 year get their first win. Would love to kind of hear how the word patience, you had highlighted the word patience a few moments ago. And I think that what's interesting is that in a world where it's all about speed and going as fast as you can around the track, and lap times in tenths of seconds, it's interesting to me that patience is valuable. Patience could almost arguably be as important as speed, right? You kind of need to oscillate between both. No different than you need to oscillate between maybe the brake and the gas. And so let's shift gears into like a race day. So imagine this, it's race day. You guys are in the mix. Qualifying times are good. Vibes are good. Temperature's perfect. Sun shining bright. You're on the track. Your athlete is competing, and maybe you have an opportunity to get on the headset, or maybe even talk to the spotter. How do you guide an athlete or a driver on how to manage patience? Because we've got tire degradation. We've got a whole bunch of laps we got to run. You're not going to win the race in the first 5 laps. How does patience come into play?
Okay, when we go into our practices, we always have a plan, and then practice says, okay, we're this fast, our car is this competitive, and then we go to qualify, and we can back that up. And then, okay, then we sit back and we say, oh, this is our day. This is we have a car capable of winning, or we have a car capable of running 10th. It's very it's it's cut and dry. Like, you know how fast your equipment is. So then we sit down and we say, okay, these are realistic goals. We need to fix the car to be better, and we work on that. So then in the race, we set goals. This is where we want to be at stage one. Obviously, we want to be in the top 10 to get stage points. This is where we want to be in stage two, again in the top 10. And then we set ourselves up for the final stage of the race. And again, some drivers, they can't manage that. Some drivers, Parker does a great job at it. You know, you have to, the word patience comes from not tearing the nose off the race car in the first stage, keeping the right front fender on it, you know, not bouncing it off the fence in the first 40 laps of the race, because then you're definitely out of business. You know, yeah, you're going to still run, but these cars they're very aerodynamic. Sorry, and then you start knocking the body panels off them, it's going to slow down. It just does. And so to go and run all day, patience is, hey, I'm not good enough to run fifth, but I'm going to run seventh, and I'm going to get the thing into the stage. Let these guys work on it, and then we're going to go race again. And as long as we do that, it's, some people call it patience, some people call it the big picture. Oh, we're looking at the big picture. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, the big picture is to get to the checker flag, right? So for me, patience is like, sometimes the owner doesn't give the team enough time for it to build itself up, get the right people, get the right equipment in the building just to be competitive. You know, this is a very expensive sport. That's no secret. So if you're spending the money that it takes to run up front, and it doesn't happen overnight, you gotta hope that the owner has enough patience to say, hey, I understand where you're at, and we are building this, and we'll get there. You know, lucky for me, I was able to get the equipment in a short amount of time with the help from RCR, and we built really good race cars and put really good motors in them, and we went to the racetrack, and we've been able to produce in a short amount of time. And I was again, I was smart enough to not try to reinvent the wheel and just say, hey, look, the RCR equipment is super fast. Let's just go do it their way, and we'll figure it out later. And so Scott's been very patient, and we were lucky to get going in a short amount of time and put the thing up front. But you know, uh, in today's time, you have to be patient, because I'll tell you, I'm waiting on parts I ordered over a year ago, and I still haven't got them. And it's their performance parts. It's not something. So to sit there and, you know, it's not just on the racetrack. It's patience waiting to get the equipment to do it better. You know, but and I've learned that, and it's just the way it is. Sometimes you do have to be patient. You got to understand everybody's trying to do their best. Again, I'm going to go back to, are they doing their 100%, or are they not? You know, and if everybody's those suppliers are operating the best they can at 100%, then that's all I can do. I can't push them anymore. So it's on and off the track. Both sides I have to be patient with technology or parts and pieces, or, you know, just because I want a new race car, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes, you know, 6 weeks to get a new car built. So we again, at 25-year-old Patrick versus 50-year-old Patrick is much different. So I'm in a better place for that.
I love it. Now, one of the things that drivers are always looking to do is to move up, right? So if you've got a driver in, let's say, the Cup Series, or I'm sorry, the Truck Series or the ARCA Series, they want to move to Xfinity. Then there may be a driver who's an Xfinity that might want to move to Cup, right?
Mhm.
What do you see as the commonality or the common trait or what have you that seems to be what propels people from one level up? Because you're going to have one group of people that's like, well, that guy's got all the money, or this person's got this big sponsor, or this one's dad's a multimillionaire. And sure, maybe that's the truth, and maybe that's why they moved up. But then you've got some people, like Parker's got a great reputation for being the one who always shows up. Amber Balkan, who's one of my athletes, said that he's actually one of the people that she looks up because he always shows up, and he's kind of like the underdog that's always there. He's always in the mix. He's going to do whatever he can, and he's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He's all racing, whether it's a podcast or competing or, what have you. So there's a lot of respect for Parker. So you've got one group of people that are doing it based on grit. Some are doing it just based on pure ability. Some are doing it based on a bank account. What do you see in the mix as like the perfect secret sauce, if there even is one? We know the word perfection doesn't truly exist, but what have you seen over the years that gets someone from these different levels and to continue up the ladder?
Well, obviously there is no, magic bullet that says, "Oh, this guy can do it." Over the years, if somebody goes and they win 5 or 6 truck races, they're like, "Oh, that guy, he's in really good equipment. He's in better equipment than the field. He should win." Or you got a guy he's in okay equipment and he goes and wins a few races, and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, that guy, he's got a lot of talent." But if you go, I look at racetracks, right? If you go and you say, "Okay, this young driver, male or female, doesn't matter," and they're at Darlington, and you're like, they're up against the fence and they're passing cars and just digging like they've been there for 20 years. You're like, "Well, wait a minute, there's something there. They're special." Okay, there's racetracks where it just takes talent, and so I look at that sometimes, and then obviously just winning fixes everything. And if you go and you're winning again, a guy like Noah Gragson wins all the races that he could there 2 years ago. He had been in Xfinity like 3 years, and yeah, he deserved the next shot into a Cup car. He'll get another shot at it because he's still super fast. If a guy is at the top of the board in practice and on the top of the board in qualifying, and he's running up front, he can go fast every week. He's going to get a shot. And now sometimes money gets in the way. Obviously, that's the driving factor. Hopefully that changes in the next few years for the owners, that they're able to put talent in their cars and instead of having to have a big check. But if at the end of the day, winning is everything, and then speed. Again, like I said, if they're week in and week out up in the front, they got it. There's just I talk about a window of their operating window of setup and what their comfort level is. Some people have a mail stamp size operating window, and some people have a garage door size operating window. If a car is and a driver week in and week out are able to run up front, it's mathematically impossible to nail the setup every single week. There's if the car is a little off, which all these race cars are, none of them drive perfect. If they're operating and running up front and extracting the speed out of it, even when it's a little off, then they have the ability to go do the next level. Does it mean they're going to be successful up there? Absolutely not. But at a certain point, they earn the right to go try, and that's what's important. That's a big step. A lot of people don't understand. Even the guy running 36 in Cup is a really good race car driver, and they're better than most. And a lot of people don't understand that. This is really, really hard. And once they go, they realize, holy cow, they're not terrible. So it's but and then mental side, you take a guy that has won and run up front for 30 weeks in a row, and he goes Cup racing and he struggles to run 25th. Well, he's gonna have a hard time keeping his head straight and not getting down on himself, questioning his ability. then they got to come back and have a good support group and understand that, well, I'm running 25th, but my teammate's running 30th. Every week I'm outrunning him in the same equipment. So, or vice versa. If your teammate's running 15th and you're running 30th, well, then you're going to have some work to do. And that's the reality. Everybody sees that a team is, drivers really can only go as fast as his equipment sometimes. But if you're gauging yourself off your teammate, well, again, if you're faster than your teammate, well, then you're probably okay. But like if you're not, that's when your head's probably going to start getting a little questioning and how are you going to pull yourself out of it. And again, it goes back to, who's your support group? Who do you lean on? Who do you talk to on a Sunday night when you just had one of the worst races of the season and you haven't run up front in 20 weeks? You're like, oh, I'm going to get fired. All that goes into it. But yes, I mean, everybody wants to race on Sundays. That's the goal, right? But it's like going from college football to NFL. All the players on the field are really good, not just some of them. So it's that's where the challenge comes in.
Yeah, I love that you highlighted that, because I do think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about because they're just so used to winning and they don't understand. If you're used to anything, if you're used to living in a nice house and all of a sudden you lose your job and you're not living in such a nice house anymore, there's an adjustment. And you should be aware that there's going to be adjustment and maybe even proactively be thinking about it. I mean, if I was working with an athlete that is, moving up from a lower series to a higher, who maybe
Mm-hmm.
was a winning rider or winning athlete, these are conversations that need to be proactively had, not reactively. And I think a lot of us all tend to be a little bit more reactive instead of proactive when there's a big opportunity for us to be prepared, not just from the car standpoint, and not from just the previous data from the years that you've had on a car setup or a track, but you also have to be prepared mentally for what may or may not happen. If everyone always is trying to win, but it's like, okay, if you do expect to be in top 10 and you're in 21st and you're giving it everything you've got, you got to have a strategy to be in 21st too and be aware of that so it doesn't kind of hit you out of left field. So I love that you highlighted
Well,
that.
to that, expectation or expectations dictate some of that misconceptions, or so if for us, if a driver moves up and that driver gets into a car that's run 30th every week and it doesn't have all the new tires or doesn't have a fresh motor or have a good pit crew, or it doesn't have the parts and pieces, but and their budget is 1/10 of what the people in front of them are spending, well, then the expectation can't be there to go run 10th. It's not going to happen. And so it's important when people go do that to say, okay, what is the realistic expectations for today, for the year? We do not have XYZ to go run or win races. Or, hey, we have ABCD to go win races. So you got to make sure that the expectation meets the goal and meets the equipment that you're in. And a lot of people, they miss that. They're like, oh, we're going to go truck racing because we've been ARCA racing but wait a minute, we're not getting in the best race car. Maybe we can't afford it. Maybe that opportunity is not there for us. Doesn't make it wrong, but know what the expectation is so that when you walk out the gate on Saturday night or Sunday night, that, hey, I met or achieved, my expectations. That's the only thing you can do. Because if you go in thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to run 10th in this car that barely makes the race every week. No, the goal is to make the race. If that car hasn't been making the race, you make the race in it. Whoa, I did better than what it's been doing. Or, hey, this car runs 20th every week, and no matter who drives it, and you go and you run 21st, it's not the end of the world. That's where the car's been running. You've done what you what the equipment's in. 9 times out of 10, people miss the expectations, and then they get down on themselves until you say, wait a minute, you shouldn't, you weren't even set up to achieve that goal. And that's that. Again, I'm going to go back. Tomorrow we're going to watch football, and they're going to blame a quarterback when a receiver drops the ball and he throws it right in his hands. We see it every Sunday, right? Well, at a professional level, those guys are expected to catch the ball. That's not the quarterback's fault, right? So if a driver gets in the car and he comes down and have a bad pit stop and the right front tire falls off, well, that's not the driver's fault. Like they can't beat themselves up over that. Now, if they go down there and they do something crazy and they back the thing in the fence, well, then that's the driver. The driver has a little bit to fall back on. But meeting expectations. What are the expectations for this week, for next week, for the year? That has to be set early on based on the tools that you have, whether that's a teammate or motor or tires or whatever. Make sure that the expectations are being met.
Yeah, and I think one of the places that I see a lot of athletes making a mistake is, the reason, in my opinion, why we have expectations is goes back like 100, 200, 300,000 years, where we needed to know what to expect because we had to have an addiction to prediction. We had to be able to predict. If we go north, are we going to find warmth or food? If we go to the east, are we going to find water? If we go, if you make a wrong decision back then, you could end up, not surviving, and maybe even possibly the whole tribe dying. So I think we've got this genetic desire to always be having this addiction to prediction and setting expectations. But where the opportunity lies, in my opinion, is that, I used to coach that, hey, set low expectations or don't have any expectations. And I actually realized that based on my knowledge at the time, sure. But now the modern day version of me, kind of like you said, the 25 version of you and now the 50, same thing with me. The older version of me as a more seasoned coach knows that you're going to want to set expectations no matter what. So I can't fight that. Darkness is going to come tonight. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. I can't fight that. However, the way to kind of massage it in and let you have that satisfaction of setting expectations can be offered by changing the type of expectation you have. And so you have your process-based expectations, which are, how well are we going to execute? What are we going to focus on? Things that are obviously within your control, your effort, your attitude, managing your emotions. There's a huge list of things that are within your control. However, once you move to results, if you've got 30-something cars out on the track, there are so many variables that are out of your control. The last thing you want to do is try to make predictions or set expectations based on outcomes or results, because that's where you start to lose control and you start to enter that danger zone where you put yourself at risk for coming up short. And I think a lot of people make that mistake of not knowing that there needs to be an expectation, but it has to be delineated as to what type it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't, and I don't, I hope I didn't come across as setting a lower expectation, but if you look across the board and say, whoa, there's 15 fully funded race cars that roll through the gate on a Friday in the Xfinity, I say like they are all 15 of them could go win a race. They have everything they need to go win a race. Well, that next group of cars, now, are they a 15th to 20th place group of cars? If that's the group that you're racing, then hey, we beat our group. This guy has this, and this. He has leased motors and he has a really good pit crew and got a good leader. Well, I took this car that never runs 18th or 16th, and I finished 16th with it. 3 weeks in a row, the thing finished 25th. Well, guess what? You did better than expected. Right? You can physically look back and say, hey, history has shown that this race car has not run this good. Or, hey, this team wasn't as good until I got in the goal and I stopped the puck. You can do that. And you can do that without getting yourself down or shooting lower. You just have to say, hey, I want to do better than what this equipment has provided in the past. If you do that, well, then people take notice of that. I don't care who you are. You see, oh man, that car ran better than it did last week, or did last time it was here. So I think keep that in mind always, always, always.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that we haven't talked about yet that I really am curious to hear what your thoughts are on is, you know, data is a big thing, right? And so we have this data, we have this information, but just like a book, you can have all the information in a book, but until you do anything with it or turn it into action, it's just pure entertainment.
Hmm.
And so I think the same thing holds true with data. We can acquire data on all kinds of metrics, whether it's tire data, suspension, speed, drag, all these different variables. Talk to me a little bit about data. How do you, first of all, what data points do you value the most? And how do you turn that data into meaningful actions?
So you're right on. So we can tell Parker, oh, it's going to do this, this, and this, or this is what the car did last year, until he goes and drives it and puts a reference to what Parker feels. It's irrelevant. We can look at all the numbers on the screen and all the video, but until you actually go and do it, you have no reference. And that's why, as our season went on, we got better, because hey, when Parker got in the car, he knew, oh, it's going to feel like this. Or when we were on the simulator and we're doing this, yes, it correlated. No, it didn't. I like it feeling like this. It needs to feel like this on Monday afternoon on the simulator. Or hey, I'm looking at speed traces, braking, corner speed, minimum speed. I'm looking at where they restart and all that. Until you do all that and it means something to you, everybody's 1 to 10 is different. So until you do it yourself, you can't quantify that. You just can't. It's not wrong. Nobody can do it. And until, we can put the same setup in there that went and won at Texas 2 years ago. It's not going to always have the same result, because everybody has a different feel. And so I even tell my son, just started driving race cars, and I tell him, you can go talk to all the people you want of how it's supposed to feel and this, but until you do it and you feel what your butt is telling you, you can't put anything to that. So as all these drivers do it, that's why Justin Allgaier and Noah Gragson and these guys that have a lot of races under their belt, they're really good. They're good anyways, but they have the experience to know, this is how it felt. This is how I wanted to feel. This is how it felt when I was in the simulator. So until you do it multiple times, it just doesn't mean anything to you. You can look at all the data you want, but until there's a race car in front of you or a race car on you, but beating on your back bumper going in the corner at Martinsville for 200 laps, now your blood pressure goes up. You're mad because a guy's trying to wreck you, and you're trying to pass the guy in front of you, and you got me yelling at you and the spotters telling you 3 wide. Now the processor in your brain it's going, you wait a minute, do I have a Texas Instrument processor? Do I get the latest Intel 12 or whatever? Like they're all, I joke because like there's reasons that some people are drummers, right? Because their hands can go both directions and their feet can go, and they can sing and they can do all this stuff. I can't do that. That my processor doesn't allow me to do that, right? I used to drive when I was a kid, and but I know what they're going through. I know what some people, it takes all of their energy just to drive around the racetrack. There's some, when you turn the TV on, these guys can talk on the radio. They don't lose any lap time, and it's like no issue to them. They're like, it's driving is just natural. Then they can use their brain. Okay, what am I feeling? what is it, what, like I think Charles Leclerc was racing there last week, and he's asking the team, hey, what about this? What about this? Do I slow down? He's out there running math in his head while operating one of the most sophisticated race cars in the world, right? So his processor he's super fast, right? So, again, doesn't make it wrong. Everybody just operates at different levels, and that's why, again, that's why some people race on Sundays and some people race on Friday nights. But for the most part, you got to be able to operate and learn. Okay, my race car did this in the spring. It's going to do this in the fall. What? Oh, wait a minute. We raced Phoenix in February. We raced Phoenix in November. What was different? Well, it's a little bit warmer. We've updated the car. We've done all this stuff. You've learned different things to do with the race car. So all that is, once you can put real personal numbers to the data, then okay, I drove into the corner to this point. Well, Sam Mayer drove in the corner here. Why is he able to do that? Okay, so then you turn around and then you can say, hey guys, I need you to fix this because I want to do what he does. Or hey, I'm able to do this better than this guy does. Keep doing that. So that's where the magic comes in as a group when you're working on it. Is all that it's just it's experience, right? Like you can call it, but you get the experience, and then you can. A lot of times you go back on Monday and you look at the data and say, oh, well, no wonder we didn't run good. Well, X, Y, and Z wasn't what we normally run, and you're like, well, we didn't know that Thursday. We didn't know that Friday night. Right. It's easy on Monday, but then you turn around and you say, okay, let's not do that again. But, Parker's very, very studious. I call it, he works nonstop on that, and we work real hard on the simulator and try to give him all the info, and we spent more time on the simulator RCR than anybody else. Just again, work, trying stuff. Just, sometimes it did produce on the track, and sometimes it didn't. But we run our lap, and then, oh, that was a really good lap. And then, okay, pull that data up. Okay, I use this much brake pressure. I was on the throttle here. I put this much steering in, and I like that. Now let's try to duplicate that over and over. So and Parker's super good at that. So I don't have to push him and sit there and try to show him, but he's all these drivers have to be good at it now, really.
Yeah, it seems like, even back in the day, it's almost fascinating to think that there was a time where there was no data and you were just trusting your butt and your gut and just trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
sometimes you made some decisions that your gut was wrong. Sometimes you made it that were right. But I think nowadays with data, obviously it increases the evidence to support either making decision A or decision B, and so it can certainly minimize the mistakes and optimize your confidence. And it definitely is underrated. It almost seems like a data analyst or a data guy to have on your team is not such a bad idea.
Well, the difference is 30 years ago we could go testing. We go practice 3 days a week if we wanted to. If you could afford the tires and had the manpower to do it. And no, we didn't have data. We didn't have. We had data acquisition and it was all available to us. You took it, but you went testing. You tested and then you created a notebook of yes, the driver liked this, or no, the driver didn't, and then you'd kind of backdoor engineer it. Okay, why did he like it? And so now, as costs have gone up and track time has decreased, now the data tells us what we need to be doing, and then the driver has to figure out if he likes it or not. And we still kind of go back and say, wait a minute, we raised the splitter up a 1/16 of an inch, and Parker liked it. right now during practice, let's not worry about what he liked about it. Let's just continue on, and then we'll sit down afterwards, and then excuse me, understand why he liked it. So sometimes we reverse engineer it, and then a lot of times, hey, this is what we're going to do. You got to figure out how to drive it, and so the again, I've done it both ways. I've done it with a notebook and a tape measure, and to where now we have lasers and computers, and we practice for 20 minutes. So I've been on both sides of it, and there's good and bads of both of it. I miss practicing sometimes, and sometimes I don't. So
Wow, I love it. And Patrick, as we wrap things up, I think about we've covered leadership, we've covered communication, we've covered data, we've covered
mm,
driver, team relations. Um, it's wild to think that we covered so much ground in just an hour and tapped into is what is probably not even 1% of all the knowledge you've acquired over the past almost 30 years. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the podcast, the Behind the Best podcast today. Your knowledge and the detail, the attention to detail, just in how you answer questions, I'm sure translates into how you do your job as a crew chief. And I just want to say, I can't thank you enough for your time and sharing so many golden nuggets.
yeah, thanks for reaching out, and I've enjoyed doing this. So thanks for having me.